Okay, so thanks for joining today's webinar. My name's Ian Harris from Search Laboratory. Today's webinar is all about attribution. Why now is the right time to upgrade your attribution model? So just some housekeeping. The webinar will last about 30 minutes, so there'll be 30 minutes of presentation, and then if you have questions, please type them in the question box. So in the little panel, you will see a question box, a chat box. Type any questions in there along the way, and I'll do my best to answer them at the end. Okay, so we'll get going. So this is the agenda today. Really, by the end of this session, what I would like you to understand is attribution in some detail, and specifically data-driven attribution, how it works and what you can do with it, how you can make more money out of that. So I'll be going through what attribution is, why now is the time, why now is a good time to be doing this. And I'm going to take you on a deep dive of the value of attribution. I'm going to do that in a way that I don't think you'll have seen before. And then we're going to look at some live case studies and what you should actually do next. Before we get going, a little bit about Search Laboratory. So we are a digital marketing agency, and we're also one of a small number of Google Analytics 360 resellers. So that is the big paid version of Google Analytics. So we're very much into digital strategy, analytics, and a big part of this now is attribution and attribution modeling. We work with a number of clients on digital strategy and their digital marketing channels. Here are a few of those. So we'll get straight on. So what is attribution? We've seen these sorts of reports for some time. So this is an analytics report, and it shows channels touched before conversion. And so we know that channels are interacting in some way before people convert, but it's been really difficult, and a lot of work's been done around this area, and people have done this for years. It's been really difficult to work out which touch point is doing what towards that conversion. So attribution is the science of assigning credit to the marketing touch points that a customer was exposed to prior to their purchase. And just to be clear, it is a science. So it is a data-backed science. It is not guesswork. It's not picking a predefined model like a U-shape or a time decay or a flat model. This is a science of assigning exact credit to marketing touch points. Why now is a good time? It's on a lot of people's minds. So in a recent Google survey, cross-channel measurement and attribution is the #1 tactic that occupies digital marketers' time. So lots of people are thinking about this, so you're not alone. And 81% of marketers want to know more about attribution. But the other key thing is, and why now is a really good time, is that analytics has got really good. So we can now view all touch points within a single analytics platform, and we can see not just clicks, we can see views of display advertising, we can see cross-device behaviors, so we can see if someone started a journey on a phone and then they finished, they made their purchase on a PC. We can start to see that activity. And the other thing is the maths has got good. So the data-driven attribution algorithms are now built into most Google tools, most Google platforms. So this is complex stuff that was reserved for some quite expensive platforms. It's now starting to be built in. So you can really start to now make sense of attribution and start to make some really sensible decisions around it. And we're going to have a look at an actual example of how this works and what sort of money you can either save or make on this. So I'm going to take you through an example now just to help you understand what attribution is and the value that it brings. And I'm going to do this in a way that hopefully you've never seen before, by kind of taking things backwards from the ground up. I'm going to use a trivial example of a new e-commerce site, but I do want you to concentrate. So please shut your emails and focus on this. If you understand this, you will understand attribution forever. So we've got the example that I'm going to use is a new e-commerce site. So this is a shop that has an existing bricks and mortar presence. So they've got a shop on the high street. It sells, I don't know, skateboards. So they've just set up a website. They've got a new online presence, and they're going to try PPC. So they're going to try some AdWords to get some traffic to their website. So they do that, and this is what happens. So this is the result of the PPC. So the first thing is they're very sensible, and they have split their PPC into generics. So that's keywords like skateboards, skateboard wheels, skateboard helmets. So these are sort of general keywords, and also brand. So this is keywords like Bob's Skateboard. So that's the name of the actual shop. It's not brands of skateboards, it's the actual brand of the shop. So these are actually we would consider these to be two different channels. And these are the results that they get. So first of all, PPC generics. They've had 100,000 impressions in this particular month that they ran this trial. They've had a 5% click-through rate, so 5% of 100,000 is 5,000 clicks. So off those 5,000 clicks, they've achieved a 2% conversion rate, which is fairly standard for an e-commerce shop. And then obviously 5,000 clicks, 2% conversion rate. If you work that out, that means 100 sales. The profit per sale is $150. So maybe they're selling, their average order value is say $200, and then the price of the skateboards and the like is $50, the cost price to them. So the profit per sale is $150. The cost per click of those 5,000 clicks is $1. So I've kept the maths nice and simple. So 100 sales, $150. Overall gross profit is therefore $15,000. The cost is 500 clicks at $1 a click, so that's $5,000. Net profit on that particular campaign, $10,000. Okay, so hopefully everyone can follow that and understand that that is a normal PPC campaign. And then the brand, so this is people searching for Bob's Skateboards, much less, but they do have some search volume because they're an existing player on the high street. Click-through rate is much higher because it's brand keywords. People know what they're looking for. They're looking for this shop. So therefore, 10% of 1,000 is 100 clicks. The conversion rate is much higher because people know the shop and they know what they're coming for. Therefore, off that 100 clicks, they've achieved 10 sales. The profit again is $150. Cost per click is much cheaper because there's very few competitors bidding on Bob's Skateboards, and therefore the gross profit, 10 sales, $150, $1,500. The cost is 100 clicks at 10 cents a click, $10. Overall profit you can see there, and what I've done is I've just summarized above overall gross profit, overall cost, and therefore net profit of this campaign is $11,490. Okay, so they're doing okay off their PPC campaign. So the next thing that they decide to do is they decide to have a go at display. So they run a display campaign. So they turn off their PPC and they give display a try. So this is prospecting. This is sending ads out onto the internet, onto lots of different sites, and showing Bob Skateboards ads all over the place. And this is the result that they get. So They get quite a wide reach, so they show 1 million times in this month that they do the trial, and then the click-through rate they got off those display impressions is 0.05%, which is actually a fairly standard click-through rate off a display campaign. 0.05% of 1 million is 500 clicks. Conversion rate is lower because people aren't necessarily that engaged with a display campaign. So 1%, so they only get 5 sales off this display campaign. Profit per sale, 150 again. Cost per 1,000 impressions, which is how display is generally bought, is $1. So the cost of those 1 million impressions is $1,000. Gross profit on 5 sales, 750, so that's 5 times 150. So overall, they've made 750, it's cost them 1,000, they are losing money on this display campaign. So any marketer worth their salt, if that was the only effect of that display campaign, would say, not making money, turn it off. However, we know that display is not necessarily there to do to achieve a direct response, so to get direct sales. And we always talk about branding, and we talk about awareness, and we talk about that top of funnel stuff, but we never quite manage to monetize, we never quite manage to value what that does. So, but what we're saying is that the channels are interacting in some way. So the display is going to have some effect on the other marketing that they're doing. So I'm going to now tell you the effect. You would never know this effect, but I'm going to tell you in this case, and we're going to compare this with a real example shortly, but I'm going to tell you the effect that the display is having on the other marketing that they're doing. And they're going to run now the PPC and the display together. So the first effect of the display is that it's going to increase the click-through rate of the generic PPC campaign. So when people search for keywords like skateboards, skateboard wheels, skateboard helmets, because they've seen display advertising all over the internet for Bob skateboards, they have a warmer feeling towards Bob skateboards, and they are slightly, so plus 5%, more likely to click on a Bob skateboard ad. So it's a very small uptick in the click-through rate. So that's one of the effects that we might see from display advertising running alongside pay-per-click. Another effect is that the brand search, so that's people searching for Bob skateboards, might go up slightly. So they've seen them on the high street, but now they've seen them all over the internet on these ads. They are slightly more likely to do a brand search for Bob skateboards. The other effect is we might see a slight uplift in the conversion rate. So on both PPC generic, so that's when people type in skateboard helmets, and also on brand, so that's when people type in Bob skateboards, we might see a very small increase in conversion rate. And the theory there is that they've seen us all over the internet. They believe we're a bigger company and therefore more trusted than they would if they hadn't seen us. So there's a slightly greater conversion rate, so only 5%. So what does that do to our pay-per-click campaign? All those effects are on our pay-per-click campaign. So the first thing is the PPC generic click-through rate is going to increase by 5%. So this campaign below is exactly as we saw it before. So the click-through rate is going to go up from 5% to 5.25%. So that is a 5% increase on that click-through rate. So it's a very small increase. So we're going to get 250 more clicks on that generic campaign. Then the other one that I said was that the PPC brand search is going to increase by 5%. So we're going to see 50 more impressions and therefore 5 more clicks on the brand campaign. And then the final effect is that the generics, on the generics and brand, the conversion rate is going to increase slightly. So you can see here, the conversion rate goes up from 2% and 10% to 2.1% and 10.5%, resulting in slightly more sales. If I walk that through the profit, what we see is that we're going to make more profit. So I've just reflected those numbers in the costs and the profit. And what we see overall is a 12.5% uplift in profit because we are running that display advertising campaign. So that's pretty significant. Now, if we look at our campaign metrics, and this is just looking at the raw last click campaign metrics. The PPC generics have got better. The PPC brand has got better. So we've got that great ROI on generics and brand. But if we look at display, we're still running the same old display campaign. It's costing us $750. Sorry, the profit is $750. The cost is $1,000. And therefore, we are still losing money on that display campaign. So we're in big danger now. We're in big danger of turning off the display campaign and losing that increase in profit that we saw on the PPC campaign. So a discerning marketer who is looking at last click would probably devalue that display campaign and turn it off. Or the other thing they might do is they might blindly run it. They wouldn't know what to do. Now, the reality of this is that increase in profit, on the PPC generics and the PPC brand campaign shouldn't really be allocated to the PPC generics and the PPC brand campaign at all, because it didn't do it. It should be back to its original profit, and it should be the display that gets the increase. So instead of losing money, we actually see that there's a true ROI. That means the display is actually worth doing. So this is what we call the true ROI, or indeed the data-driven ROI. So our ROI goes up from 0.75 to 2.4 times. Now, that, you know, in terms of percentages, PPC generics and PPC brand should really lose 9% of that value, and display should increase by 220%. So that's from those very small 5% uplifts. Now the reality is, I told you what these effects were, and you never know what these effects are. There is no system that says, look, the click-through rate has increased and the PPC brand search has increased. But what we do have access to now are data-driven attribution tools, and the way they work is as follows. So what they do is they analyze paths to conversion and paths to no conversion with and without certain touch points in the path. So in this example, we've got search and then email as a path. And if we analyze all of those, this is saying actually we get a 2% likelihood of conversion if users follow that path. For the users that follow this path, which is exactly the same apart from there's a display click in the middle, we see an increase in likelihood of conversion, and therefore the data-driven attribution tool would say that that display click increases the likelihood of purchase by 50% by being there. So if we're showing that, we're seeing an uplift in the conversion rate. So what these tools do is they analyze all paths in your, all paths to conversion, all paths in analytics, and it does some quite complex maths on all of these paths, and then it starts to allocate and say what the value of each touch point is in each position. And we come out, and I've got some actual examples that will show you the effect of this. So this is an example from a client, so from a live client. And the thing that I'll just point out here, so this column here is last interaction. So this is the last click model, and it's comparing, and this is Google Analytics 360, it's comparing last interaction with data driven. Okay, so the system is saying, okay, what's the difference between last interaction and data driven? And we see these uplifts and downlifts. And the one I'm going to point out to you, highlight here, is display. So this system is telling us that we are undervaluing display by 270%. Now, if you remember, and I'll just step back to it, if you remember my example where I guessed at the 5% uplifts and it caused a 220% uplift in display ROI, in this real example, we're seeing a 270% uplift. So my trivial example is actually not far from the truth. I've got another example here. This is a last non-direct click for a different client compared with data driven. And we see almost 2,000% undervaluation of our display activity. Again, 480% for a different client. Finally, 4,000% for this particular client. So again, last non-direct click versus data-driven. 4,000% undervalued display. So display, that holy grail of what is my display advertising worth, is answered by these algorithms. It's really, really powerful stuff. It's not just display. I'll just walk you through an example now of how this has worked for another live client. So this particular client, we're looking at some PPC data. So this is a fashion client, and they sell dresses, bridesmaids, fashion, tops, footwear. They got a load of campaigns around fashion. And the data that we're looking at here is last AdWords click. So if we looked in AdWords, this is the sort of results we would see within the AdWords interface. So we're seeing almost break even on dresses, but in the other campaigns, we're seeing a good ROI, we're seeing a good return on ad spend. However, when we look at this through the data-driven lens, so we've had analytics do the data-driven maths on it, we see all the return on ad spend drop dramatically. And actually, where we thought we were making money, we are actually losing money on these campaigns. So when we drilled into this, what we found was that a lot of these campaigns were relying heavily on RLSA. And RLSA is where people have been to our website before, and if they do a search subsequently on dresses or tops or whatever it might be, we bid up heavily on those users, on those audiences, and then we grab that conversion. And really, the interpretation of this is that the data-driven tool is telling us that actually a lot of those conversions we would have got anyway. That is what this tool is telling us. We did not necessarily need to bid up so aggressively on those terms when on RLSA where they'd been to our site before. So this completely changed our tack. So we realized that we needed to do something dramatic. We pulled back massively on RLSA, and we changed and we shifted budget into lookalike audiences. So this is we're advertising to people that look like that display behaviors that are similar to our converting customers. So completely changed tack based on what this said. And the results of this are as follows. So in March and April, we were using the last click model. So we were making 25,000. We were spending 25,000. 522 conversions. You can see the gross profit and the ROI there. In April, we spent less. Got a good number of conversions, so there's optimization going on. But in May, we completely changed. We adopted the learnings. Actually, it was our interpretation of the data-driven attribution, and we completely changed tack. And you can see that we spent 7,000 and we got significantly more conversions overall. Cost per acquisition hugely reduced, profit massively up, as is ROI. And we reckon there was some seasonality in this, but we reckon a conservative estimate for the increase in ROI just on the paid search campaigns here was 250%. And I really like this example because it is Google's tool assessing Google data coming off pay-per-click, AdWords pay-per-click, advising us to spend less on Google. You know, you normally run the Google reports and they always tell you to spend more, but in this particular case, and I'll say actually, this is not data-driven attribution telling us to do this. This is data-driven attribution telling us where to look. So we look in the campaign, we interpret the data, and then we make changes accordingly as to what we think is a better targeting option. So really, really powerful stuff. And these are the tools that you can actually, these tools now have data-driven attribution built in. So Google AdWords, many people don't know this, but Google AdWords has data-driven attribution built in, as does DoubleClick. So if you're serving your pay-per-click and your display advertising through DoubleClick, it's got these algorithms built in. Google Analytics 360, again, has everything built in. Standard Google Analytics does not. So standard Google Analytics, you can employ standard kind of U-shaped models and the like, but it does not do this data-driven stuff. There are two new tools coming, Attribution and Attribution 360. Attribution is a free tool. It's not out yet. We're expecting it in the next few months. Attribution 360 will be next year. That is a paid tool and it's fairly expensive. The difference between all of these tools is what data they can see, so what channels they can see. Google AdWords, for example, can only see AdWords PPC and the Google Display Network, so it can only see what it is managing. So it won't attribute between your PPC and your, I don't know, your SEO or your email advertising. DoubleClick will do everything that it can see, so it can see your display advertising. It can see impressions as well, so it does not need clicks. It can see the effect of impressions, but DoubleClick does not manage SEO or anything you can tag up through DoubleClick. You can attribute. Google Analytics 360 is probably the most comprehensive because that can see any impressions through DoubleClick, so you can link the two together and you can see anything that Analytics 360 can see, and then you can start to do data-driven attribution on those channels. The attribution tools will be advanced. The differences between them, the attribution standard doesn't do the DoubleClick display, so that the impression data, but Attribution 360 does it all. And Attribution 360 has also got some forecasting tools, so you can say, okay, I'm spending $10,000 a month on paid search. What if I spent 20,000? It will model that for you using its attribution modeling system. So these tools are there now. What you should do now to get going on this, the first thing is sort analytics out. So your analytics, if you get rubbish in or trash in, you get trash out. So sort your analytics, make sure it's not double counting, make sure it's working properly, get it set up correctly, get a really good audit of your analytics, and then sort out your METs or your channels, or the METs is modeling event types. So that is these boxes, so display advertising, paid search, direct, organic search. Really, what you should be doing, paid search should be split, and it is easy to do this. Paid search should be split into generic paid search and brand paid search. You should be splitting those out because they are in effect different channels. And likewise, display advertising should be split into prospecting and remarketing. They are entirely different channels. So get those split out so you start gathering data so that the data-driven attribution tools can start when they're ready, when they have enough data to analyze it, because you can't backdate those splits. Get any offline conversion sorted out. So if you're a B2B company, there are really good links now between Salesforce or whatever your CRM is. We've linked bespoke CRMs to analytics so that when that prospect or that opportunity progresses through the CRM, you can pass that information, those events, back into analytics and start to optimize for opportunity value rather than just lead volume. So for example, if an opportunity value goes against an opportunity, or the win percentage changes, or it turns into a sale, you can pass those events back from your CRM into analytics. It's relatively straightforward. It's out of the box with Salesforce and Analytics 360, but you can start optimizing for business value, not just lead volume. We have a video on that which we'll send out in the follow-up. And then the final thing is get attributing. This is very, very powerful. The example that I gave, I mean, it's all in the interpretation of what you do with the results of the attribution modeling systems, but you can see the sort of uplifts and savings that you can make. So in summary, it's here. The systems are there. You really just need to use it. If you don't do this and your competitors do, then they will have the edge. And from our experience of the companies that we talk to, there are very few people doing this properly. So give yourself the edge over your competitors. It's a massive benefit for you. So contact details, that's it. That's all I've got to say. Here's our contact details. Please get in contact. We've got time for a few questions. So we have some coming in now. So I'll just quickly cover some of those. So we've got one, and if you, by the way, you still have chance to ask questions. So please just type them in the box. So question one, if you don't have a data-driven attribution system, so if you don't have 360 or one of the other systems, which is the best of the standard models to use? So there's standard models that you can use within analytics. So U-shaped model, there is a flat model, a time decay model. It's a hard question to answer that. If you're a very impulse purchase, then a last click might be good enough for you. So if people come and purchase on one visit, then last click might be good enough for you. If you're a standard retailer and you have lots of touch points, then a linear model where you give every touch point the same value, you basically share it out, is not a bad approach. I have read articles to say that is not a bad approach. However, it's very difficult to say. Have a look at your analytics and use data driven. It's not that expensive. Use it, and it's often free depending on what tools you're using. Okay, so next question, how does cross-device work? So I mentioned cross-device. So it's quite simple actually. The way that it works is that it uses logged in data. So Google knows that you're phone, your mobile phone, is linked to your laptop because you have logged in on both of those devices to some Google property, be it Gmail or Google itself. So it creates what we call a device graph that it uses for its cross-device measurement. Final one we've got time for: how much is Analytics 360? So again, it's a difficult one to answer. It absolutely depends on how many hits to your website, how many websites you want to actually measure using analytics. So do you want to roll up, have you got 15 websites, different countries, different locales that you want to roll up? So it's very easy. We can give you a price for Analytics 360 immediately. So I'm not trying to be elusive. It just does depend on your circumstances and the size and the busyness of your site. So that is all we've got time for. Thank you very much for joining. So I hope you found that useful. Please do get in touch. All the details on there. We'll follow up with the slides, and have a great day.